Hello and welcome. It is All for United. It is an incredibly special show for a number of different reasons. And we probably are on a time limit today because I have not worn this particular shirt probably since I was in my 20s. It's not built for the figure that I've got now. And I'm finally starting to realise how people like Ambo Lynn felt back in the Tudor times, because it's a little bit on the tight side. But we'll see how we get on. If I pass out halfway through, these guys will take over. They don't really need me, but we will introduce them because I've been excited about this all day. We have got three people with just insane amounts of knowledge, and they are originals, OGs from All for United, long before I was anywhere near this channel. And so we've dragged them all back. As you can see, Benny's not actually shaved since the last time he was on All for United, and we're going to start there because it is a genuine delight, Benny, to finally have you back on our channel. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, and it's happened today. How the hell are you?
I'm brilliant, thank you, Barry. It's been a while, like you said, but you know what they say, don't you? Well, let me get this right now. Good things. Oh no, I've completely fucked it up already.
Things come to those who wait.
That's the one. That's the one. You know what I was on about, mate. I've already cocked it up already. First microphone problems at this before we backstage area. Now this.
It's all good. It takes a while to get us back used to it, but I simply cannot wait. And just below him, of course, somebody who has been a regular, but we've obviously been rotating a little bit over the course of the last couple of months, trying to get some newbies in as well. But he is back, of course, by popular demand. And that is, of course, Mr. Stu, Blood on the Boots, Willie. How are you, sir? He's muted, so we should probably do that bit first. There you go, try it.
I'll tell you what, Benny's been away and the schoolboy errors start to come out in me already. It's because I'm so shivering with joy that the man himself is back. And of course, my old mate Johnny K. It's great to be on a show with with both of you guys, and of course Baz as well. But no, I'm great. I've been away at Cheddar. I stayed at a cottage in Cheddar Village for the week, and I've spent the time relaxing and recuperating, which is good. Ankle injury, fingers crossed, is behind me. So I should be back at it. Our game's tomorrow, so against Worcester City. So I should be back at it and causing some grief on the pitch tomorrow with a bit of luck. So I'll let you know how I get on. But all good. Thanks for inviting me.
The mighty Tipton Town will need you, Stu. That is for
yes. Oh yes. Skipper now, Benny. By the way, just for you.
Ooh.
I've got a lovely kind of like multicoloured armband just for you, Benny.
Stu, by the way, multicolours of poses, mate.
Oh, you bastard. Which clearly I am not.
You haven't got past the introductions
I went
kick off already.
The old black one, Benny, with a big C in there.
Good lad, that's better. That's better.
Just for you, Pat.
And of course, just below us, we have got the one and the only, live from the US of A, Mr. John Commode. Pleasure to have you back here as well. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this show, and it's great to be back on with Stu and definitely with Benny because it's been a very long time in the making. Just make a point on Stu playing Worcester, isn't the big boss Connor from Worcester?
I think he is actually. Yeah, I did. We do play actually at the Six Way Stadium.
Yeah,
when we play out in Worcester, but we're playing at home on Tipton's home turf tomorrow. So, but I will let the big fella know when we're there, and he can come and get his banner out for me. You know, get the old crowd singing. It's usually hard to get tickets to the mighty Tipton Town, obviously, fellas. But for you guys, I'll swing it.
And if he supports the other team, you can boot one in his face, can't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to draft Benny in for that game to play in goal for me.
Why not? Why not?
And what will it be, Mr. Brazil?
Oh yeah, get the cards out already.
Mr. Brazil.
Well, there we go. it has begun, and I'm honestly, I'm pumped for this one indeed. But let's just throw this out because Dan's obviously not here this evening. He's just popping by to announce my move to all from Borussia Dortmund after my boss criticised me last stream and hashtag Barry out. So there we go. If you were on the last show or you have watched that, you will see what is going on there. And as NT explains, I thought this might happen. Barry Ten Hag just told you to pull your socks up in training. The toys have been thrown out the pram. So he shall now not be known as Dan. I think we shall probably call him what? Danjo? That would probably do it. So there we go. Where can we go with this next? Let's see. We've got Vicky. She's popped in again as well. Lovely to see you. And again, the three of these guys are 100% going to be carrying this show. I've literally just got to try and keep control. God knows I've been to do that, but we'll give it a good go. So basically, I thought as it's a OG thing, and we're taking a trip down memory lane, a nice way to do that and an easy way to generate those discussions in debates has to be a top five. And when it comes to Man United, that's not easy to do. We've had our moments before. We've put in like five-a-side teams. We've tried doing things like that. We've tried coming up with an all-time Manchester United 11. But today, we're just going to go through positions. And this is going to cause dramas because how do you compare a fullback with a centre-back? How do you compare a winger with a central midfielder? Well, I don't have to because these three are going to give it a go. And I simply can't wait for that to happen. So, I think we're going to kick it on for the Harry Hill collar. Now. I'm not going to mention it, and we'll just see if anybody else pops in. But I will agree that with the hair, it is probably more Harry Hill than the King. I will give you that, but still, behave. So, let's kick off with a top five. And I think we're going to kick off with the top five, a nice easy one, goalkeepers. Now, this should not be the hardest thing in the world to pull out. But obviously, as we go, we're going to name one person each. But the problem is going to be if somebody else takes your one, you then got to think about who would be next on your list because obviously we're trying to create a top five. So we shall see. I'm going to kick us off because then you lot can start talking and I can start thinking about where we're going to go next with this and how exactly I'm going to make this work and all of those sorts of admin type things. So I'm just going to go out there and simply go with the obvious answer so that you guys have got to do some thinking. And that is, of course, the one, the only, the greatest of all Danes, Mr. Peter Schmeichel. He doesn't require a huge amount of discussion, I don't feel, on that one. And I think anybody who's sitting there thinking that that man doesn't deserve to be in the top five probably needs some help in terms of their history. But now to you three. If I've chosen the potential number one, how are we going to fill these other four slots? I think we'll let, as he's back, Mr. Benjamin Brazil try and pick number two. And he's a goalie, so, you know, and he's played at Old Trafford. It's going to be you, isn't it?
No, it's not me, mate, unfortunately, because I was got lobbed left, right and centre in that game. But, yeah, I had a terrible, terrible game. Shall not speak of it, apart from Alan Keegan, who knows with the voice of Old Trafford, is going to obviously tell everybody how piss poor I was in that game. So, yeah, best forgotten, but what an opportunity, what an honour to play on that field. Wow, anyway, I was going to say Massimo Taibbi, but you've hit the bar. You've already set the bar quite high. So, logical next choice, obviously, Edwin van der Sar, European Cup winner. Really, really steady between the sticks. Hardly ever made a mistake either. I was pretty sure it's still a world record shutout in it as well for goals for the time for goals conceded or not conceded, should we say? Was it 1,000 and something odd minutes or whatever it were? I can't quite remember the top of my head, but Van der Sar, what a legendary goalkeeper. Not only for Manchester United, but for Ajax as well, really, for Juventus. And then obviously had his stint at Fulham as well before he came to United. But he came to United at, obviously, when you would think a goalkeeper shouldn't be at the highest of high levels And Van der Sar came in, and he was absolutely brilliant from the first moment. He put the gloves on, stood in between the sticks at the Theatre of Dreams. He never really put a foot wrong. Very commanding, good in the air, always catching. Not really a shouter like Schmeichel, didn't need to really shout, just little bits of talk here and there with Vidic and Rio especially. But Edwin, what a quality goalkeeper. He top trumped me there when he went Schmeichel first. I was going to go Taibbi, but Edwin van der Sar it is for me.
Massimo Taibbi is just... he will forever remain in our consciousness, and I genuinely think that is, for good or for ill, something that you've got to be impressed with. Mr. Johnny K, you're a man who knows your history. We often call you Stato on this channel. You'll probably have to verify Benny's little point that you just made there. But whilst you're doing that, who would you put in? Not at number 3, but as the third entrant into our top 5 goalkeeper Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 that I have in mind. Obviously, Schmeichel and Van der Sar would agree were probably the top 2. You got to consider Stepney, I think. He was top goalkeeper, won the league with us, won the European Cup with us. Obviously, we got relegated with him, but he was steady for us for 12 years, I think he was at the club, and he was integral to the way we played, because I think we always talk about past keepers being part of the attack as if it's a new concept, and as Stu mentions, many a time ball-playing goalkeepers are not necessarily a new thing. It goes back decades, and I think it's one of the reasons I think Matt Busby bought 3 goalkeepers. He broke the record 3 times for ball-playing goalkeepers during his management. And for me, Stepney was an integral part of the late 60s and the 70s. And maybe went a little bit too long for those who remember him. But I think only up until the end of another goalkeeper I was thinking of, I think he's second on the list for the most appearances by a Manchester United goalkeeper. So I think you got to consider Stepney, I think.
Very, very, very hard to disagree with what you've said there, which means Stu, you get the last shoe-in. Should we call him a stew-in at this point? So who would you put in there? Because there's a couple of names maybe that we'd be expecting to hear. Where are you going to go with this?
Well, I was disappointed I couldn't go with Taibbi. Obviously, Benny beat me to it. And, of course, Benny maybe forgotten about the great Chris Turner, who was obviously, and, of course, Les Seeley, stalwarts of the Manchester United goalkeeping fraternity. But all great choices so far. But you cannot discount the one and only, the great Gary Bailey. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, he was tremendous. And if any of you watching who don't recall the exploits of Gary Bailey, South African born, unfortunately, but came to the UK, played for England. I think he was third choice because at that particular time, and Johnny K and Benny both corroborate this, is behind the one and only Ray Clements and Peter Shilton around that kind of era. Now, he played in a team, which wasn't particularly forward thinking. He was in and around the club at the time with Dave Sexton and, of course, good old Big Ron. In 1979, which was probably my favourite cup final of all time. I loved 85, obviously, for the Whiteside goal, but 79, I was a 9-year-old boy watching it on the Cup Final Grandstand. Again, if you don't know what Cup Final Grandstand is, please go and search it, because it was certainly in my era. It was the kind of jewel in the crown for the FA Cup. We got beat 3-2 by Arsenal that day. My favourite ever goal, which I'm sure Johnny K can recite for me right now. Sammy McElroy weaving his way through to score the second after Big Gordon Mack had popped in the first for us. We were 2-0 down, by the way. Frank Stapleton and Liam Brady. It was Liam Brady, wasn't it, for the first, and Stapleton for the second, or vice versa, something along those lines. Oh, is it Talbot? Brian Talbot, sorry, got the first, didn't he? Stapleton got the second, and Alan Sunderland popped one in, and Gary was slightly off his line, and he got taken aback. But he went on to have a great career. Some of his highlights, one in particular, we got beat 6-0 by a very, very good Ipswich team back in the 80s. I think might have been 81, might have been 80 or 82, something along that line. Yeah. 82, yeah. Saved 2 penalties in that game.
Actually.
Three, you're right.
Yes.
3. So 3 penalties in that game, and we still were on the end of a 6-0 thrashing. So for me, you have to put Gary Bailey in the conversation. Les Seeley, obviously, very, very close to being there. Chris Turner being close to being there, but you have to put Gary Bailey in that conversation.
Well,
One of Manchester United's greats.
I think the interesting thing about Gary Bailey was you mentioned that error he made for Arsenal's winning goal in '79, but then he made up for it 4 years later with that save against Brighton in the cup final. When he was clean through, and he obviously it went to a replay, but without that we wouldn't have won the cup. So it was like that Andy Cole when he missed that chance at West Ham. And 4 years after he scored the goal against Tottenham, it was like kind of the reverse for Bailey, wasn't it? So.
And you're talking about a time, by the way, as well, where pitches. Wembley at that time was uncompromising. The pitch, it was terrible. And when you look at Smith boring down on Bailey, the ball was bobbling all over the place, wasn't it? And he got a decent strike on it, to be fair. Because it was bobbling so much, it gave Bailey the chance to get in there. Stepney, would tell you exactly the same when Eusebio was bearing down on him that time, and the ball was bouncing and bobbling anywhere. And he did say to me when I interviewed him about that a few years ago that it was either, death, hospital, or I'm just going to take the ball. And that's why, Eusebio stayed there to shake his hand, because he realised just what a brave save that was. I mean, he really hit it, didn't he, Eusebio, if you remember there?
I do wonder how he managed to keep hold of it.
I mean, he absolutely smashed. But he said to me, he said, the power. He said nobody can understand the power that Eusebio had in his legs, and it comes to him. So anyway, I digress. It's Gary Bailey for me.
So I was expecting a little bit of digression. I know that will surprise you, but I was pretty prepared for what was going to be happening today. We have got 4. We put Schmeichel, we put Van der Sar, we put Stepney, we put Bailey. And Stu, you did mention a couple of other ones. We're all now going to name one person, and then in my very best Harry Hill, we're all going to turn into badgers, and we're going to have a fight about it and decide which one makes it in the 5th. So it might well be that we have to put that out on a Twitter poll to let somebody else decide. We'll see. I don't know. Anything could happen, and I like it. So out of those people you've just mentioned, Stu, who would get your second vote?
Are you on about the goalkeepers I mentioned, or the guy? Romero.
You were picking those.
Romero. It was Romero, wasn't it? Would come in 5th for me.
Romero.
The goalkeeper that never was, I call him. He was the best number 1 / number 2 I think a club has ever had.
Interesting.
He was absolutely brilliant for us. Never let us down when he came in. You could talk about the unprofessional Bosnich all you like. I don't think he was a great keeper anyway. Victor Valdez, washed up when he came. Jim Leighton, absolutely superb at Aberdeen. Just couldn't hack it in our league. It's close between Taib and Romero. Benny's right. Taib is up there with but Raymond van der Houw, who played today, could quite easily be brought up there. But again, I don't think it was brilliant. Steve Pears back in the 70s was okay. We've had some okay goalkeepers, but Romero for me, was at Manchester United at the very wrong time. I just thought it was an absolute travesty. But then you've got De Gea in there, and nobody's mentioned De Gea, which is what people have been wondering why I bought Romero over De Gea, but I thought Romero is a better keeper. Just my
Interesting. John, who would be your option? You right there, John?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you say. So you just cut out briefly.
I know you're in America, but it shouldn't take that long for it to get.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear what you. Sorry, you just cut out. Just said my name there. Sorry.
I said your second choice.
My second choice. I think you can't ignore. I mean, he wasn't the best goalkeeper we ever had, but I think you can't ignore De Gea for 12 years service, most appearances as a goalkeeper. I think when you look at post-reality, you could argue he was in at the wrong time, and he was, for many years, he was one of the more consistent performers when the team were starting to fail after Fergie. And obviously, I was critical at times, commanding his area and all that, but on the flip side, he made some incredible saves at times, and I think he was possibly one of the best shot stoppers we ever had. I think he got the clean. Did he get the clean sheet record? I can't remember now. But
no, he didn't get the record, did he, Benny? He was about third.
Yeah,
so something like that.
Yeah. But he made the most appearances, and he had we didn't always have the most stable back four. But yeah, for me, if you look at the general longevity and everything, I will put De Gea in there.
Very interesting. Benny, who would be your second choice?
So it just popped in right there just before I was going to say Harry Gregg, and I'm surprised nobody's mentioned Harry Gregg yet. Not only a top goalkeeper, but a guy that's went back and pulled people out of the Munich air disaster, pulled people out of a burning plane. Has been an overall hero off the field there, surprised nobody actually mentioned him. And I was about to say Harry Gregg, and then NT popped up in the comments straight away just as I was going to get there. But yeah, Harry Gregg's another choice that I'm surprised nobody's mentioned or made. It's I just think just for his heroics, when the plane obviously crashed, and it was pulling people out of the plane, getting people to safety, trying to organise things, organise people that need medical attention and stuff like that. I think, and the guy was an absolute gentleman. I know plenty of people that have met him, and they always say he's a top gentleman, always gave his time to fans, always, for a picture or an autograph or a little chat for 5 minutes. I just think, for me, if I had to have a second choice, it would be Harry Gregg.
And I think it's the call I would have gone for. But thankfully, I had another person written down just in case these people were stolen. So that's all good. Now, obviously, this all came about because today there was a match at Old Trafford for the MUFC Foundation. And it was a big old one. The legends were playing, and they call them legends. It's a loosely used term. They're players that used to play for Manchester United. Some of them you would call legendary, some of them legendary for other reasons. But it's an incredibly good team. And I'm just going to run you through what that team was, by the way. So obviously Brian Robson was the manager on this occasion. They had Raymond van der Houw in goal, who's had a little bit of a mention, but has certainly not been mentioned in terms of the top five, really. We have then, of course, can remember writing. That was Bardsley. That was the one. We don't have a Beardsley. When did he come in? Bardsley. That's the one who played there. Ronnie Johnson we had. Michael Silvestre. Simpson. Jemba. Darren Fletcher was there. Michael Carrick, of course. Valencia. Rooney. And, of course, everybody's favourite from Stu, Mr. Dimitar Berbatov, was also there as well. But there's a couple of other ones, Pilkinson and Lindegaard, again, people that are not necessarily mentioned in this conversation. We had Pugh and Butt and Skulls and Eagles and Karol Poborski, remember him? Campbell and Webber. And because it's not a proper game, even Dennis Irwin came on to score a penalty, which was quite something, possibly the oldest penalty scorer of all time. But
yeah, Barry, you missed out the great Luke Chadwick.
Was he there as well? He wasn't on my list from the Man United website, I'm afraid. So
Luke Chadwick was there though, pal.
Was it Luke? Big Luke.
Yeah, good old Luke Chadwick.
Like Luke Chadwick. But yes, so my second choice for a goalie, and the one that I will put forward to the poll, he was one of my favourites when I was growing up, and that's the reason why. I thought he was absolutely mad, and I loved him for it. And that was Les Seeley. Just absolutely brilliant. And of course, no longer with us. So that would be mine. We could have a big fight about it. Maybe we'll have a big fight about it if we don't have much time at the end. But otherwise, I feel like we're just going to be talking about goalkeepers for a whole show. And whilst that might be entertaining for us, maybe not for everybody else. So let's step it up a bit and move into the defence. Now, I went first last time, so we're going to go to somebody else. And we'll let Benny, on this occasion, choose his first defender. Now, this is difficult because you might prefer wing-backs, might prefer full-backs, might prefer centre-backs, sweepers. Where would you go with it?
Well, for my first pick, mate, I'm going to have to go for the greatest full-back in Premier League history, Dennis Irwin.
He's in straight away.
Absolute Mr. Reliable. People say 8 or 9. I would say he was a 10 out of 10, Dennis Irwin. Never put a foot wrong. Never made a mistake, in my opinion. Scores free kicks, penalties, take set pieces, take corners. And these days, managers seem to obsess with having a left foot on the left-hand side, a right foot on the right-hand side. But he was a right-footed left-back, mainly playing for Manchester United. So, but what a player, Dennis Irwin. Great footballing brain as well. Great footballing brain. Very rarely caught out of possession. Knew where he had to be at all times on the football field. He's probably one of the defenders that Schmeichel scream at less. Obviously poor old Pally and poor old Brucey. You know, we used to always get a good old ear right there. But good old Den, he knew where. You know, because he was 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Knew enough every match. You didn't have to speak to good old Den. Just let him get on with his game, play his game. But what an awesome player! What an awesome player! Someone put this on Twitter earlier on. Is he the greatest Irishman to play for Manchester United of all time? There's a shout of that as well. There's a big shout for Dennis Irwin. Yes, United have had a history of great Irish players. You know, probably the greatest Georgie Best, but you know, it's a good shout though. Dennis Irwin, you know, it's well worth a shout, well worth a mention. He's definitely looked fitter than Luke Shaw, bless him.
Wayne Rooney looked fitter than Luke Shaw.
Well, to be fair,
get Irwin playing at Southampton.
Yeah. But he looks in fine shape though, Dennis. I always see him around Old Trafford on match days as well. Always looks in superb shape. I'm sure he works out. Works out most days or whatever, because he's in tremendous shape, you know, compared to some of his other pros, you know, his fellow pros, ex-pros, should we say. He's in great shape. But what a player, man. I can't find words to describe how good he actually is, because that's how good a footballer is. When you struggle to find superlatives, you're running out of all the superlatives that you can use, because he was just that damn good. But I'd probably say, of all Sir Alex Ferguson signings, he's probably the best. And Sir Alex Ferguson, as we know, signed many of a good player. But for me, Dennis Irwin is probably the best that Sir Alex Ferguson ever signed. You know, and that's probably the greatest compliment you could pay the guy.
I think it's quite something. Dennis Irwin listen, he was a legend. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think what's even nicer, humble. Yeah. Just no airs and graces, not out there trying to be any Billy Biggs, just simple. And yeah, can't argue with that at all, Benny. That is a brilliant first shout. But Mr. Commode, who would be your first shout if you had to go for what is essentially at this point the question of who is the greatest defender of all time for Manchester United? If not Dennis Irwin.
Yeah, I can't have any arguments. Dennis would have been our first choices and the fullback. For me, I think Yap Stam was an incredible centre half. For us, it was integral in the treble season, and we only had him for a short 3 years. But I just think what he brought to that defense, he was just an all-round great defender. He was strong, he was powerful, he could pass. Not many people. There was that chant, isn't there? Try a little trick, he'll make you look a, that chant. So for me, he was just one of the best all-round defenders I've ever seen. And for me, I think he's got to be a strong contender for me.
It's very hard to disagree with Yap Stam. He was bigger than your stand, and clearly he's going to be bigger than some of the other defenders because he's made it to the list. Stu, you're up, buddy. Who would be the third one in?
Yeah, you see this one, right? This category is almost impossible to select 5. I mean, I could go back to the 70s with the great Arthur Olberston as a left back. I mean, when I'm talking great, I'm talking great. He was absolutely brilliant. Very, very reliable. Not as reliable as the one and the only Dennis Irwin, which, yeah, I mean, crikey. I mean, you've got to bow down to that player. But Alberston equally was revered back in the 70s. He was just ultra reliable. You sit alongside him, you've got the great Martin Buchan, brilliant centre half. Gordon McQueen, we got from Leeds, superb centre half, absolutely brilliant. There's Yap Stam that's been mentioned. You've got to look at the right backs. We have Viv Anderson at right back at one stage in his career. Yes, not at the real pinnacle, but we still had this great player. We had at the time Johnny Cale, and people will laugh at this, but at the time John Gidman was one of the best fullbacks in the division, in the old division. At right back, he was brilliant. Paul Parker. I could go on forever. My pick is the one and only Stephen Bruce. He was, for us, fucking phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And people forget about him. He's not in the conversation, but he should be in the conversation. When you talk about St. Arsenal, Manchester United, you rightly talk about Yap Stam. You rightly talk about Nemanja Vidic. You rightly talk about Rio Ferdinand. You rightly talk about a variety of players, but you very rarely speak about, I think, the best centre half never to play for England full. I think did he get a B cap, Johnny? Which was nothing back in the day, but he didn't play for the full English team. Scored 18 league goals one season. Brilliant defender, but that guy would basically come out, he'd be bleeding, he'd be bruised, he'd be limping. So what a proper centre-half should be. Our centre-halves, fucking Van Dijk and all these clowns today, they just fucking wander off, with their fucking baby oil on and all that bollocks. Fucking Bruce. Honestly,
You're watching WWE again, Stu.
Yeah, his shirt would be fucking ripped or something. His nose was fucking... he broke his nose about 10 times, 12 times playing for the club.
Yeah.
He was a proper leader. And do you know what? He was unfashionable. He didn't look right. He didn't run right. He didn't have any pace, but nobody gave a fuck about his pace back then. Nobody spoke about pace back then. Let me remind everybody, there were some rapid centre forwards and rapid wingers back when Stevie Bruce was plying his trade. It has to be in the conversation. He's got to be.
I don't disagree, Stu, because he was written in my list of people that I would be expecting to be mentioned at the very least, and also that I would mention if they weren't already, because he was there. Dolly and Daisy were both.
We'd like to point one thing out very, very briefly. Benny will appreciate this. To everybody who loves coloured football boots, Old Arthur Albiston debuted a boot called Puma Stepstar back in the late 70s and had an orange sole, which was back in the day. So check out Puma Stepstar football boots, had an orange sole.
I'm not sure Benny is impressed with that.
No, he wouldn't be. But they were black on top with white. But sorry, they also had an instep, a raised instep, just to support your instep of your foot. Puma Stepstar. Not many people remember him.
I think also about Steve Bruce, the fact that, you know, we all remember Robson caps in Marvel, and but obviously, as we know, Robson used to get injured quite a lot, and obviously he improved the team when he played, but when he was injured, you lacked something on the pitch, a bit of leadership and that kind of thing. And what was integral was that first Premier League success we had in that first season.
Steve.
Steve Bruce was probably the first captain we had outside of Robson to like grasp the mantle and be a leader, you know, on the pitch and take over that responsibility as captain. And I think that was massively important. So I don't think you can underappreciate what Steve Bruce did for the club, because I think Paul Ince once said, because we went 26 years and we had a lot of success after, but it was that first one in 93, which
92-93 season,
92, which set the ball rolling. They were the team that did it first, and Steve Bruce was a massively important player.
Should have won it in
Didn't he score the
91.
goals in the last game of the season?
Pardon?
We scored against Sheffield Wednesday. It was the penultimate game, I think, wasn't it, Johnny?
Gary Pallister scored in the last game.
Yeah,
Gary Pallister scored. So Stevie Bruce scored two headers.
That was Easter Saturday.
We were a goal down to a penalty by
John
Sheridan. And then Brucey, by a Pallister cross, if I'm not mistaken, scored a diving header.
Sheridan grew up around Old Trafford, I think.
He did.
Well.
But his first goal, Baz, was off a corner. And it was from, as we're looking at it, it's from the far side. So it would be the right-hand side as we're looking at it to the far side. The ball was whipped in. I presume it was Giggsy, Benny. I can't quite remember, but I presume it was Giggsy that whipped it in. And then Bruce was almost slightly offset. So the ball comes in, he flicks his header up, and it was a looping header, which put it over Chris Woods. Chris Woods was in goal, and it put it over Chris Woods. You can't underestimate how difficult that header was, because to get the loop and to beat Chris Woods was about 6'3", wasn't he, Johnny?
Yeah. I mean, Chris Wood. I mean, if you look back at that game, he was just having the game of his life.
All of a sudden, he went to pieces. And then we it was about 6 minutes worth of injury time or whatever, Fergie time. And that Pallister cross that came in, it was the most woeful cross, wasn't it, lads? If you know, I mean, I was at the game and I remember it was an awful cross. If you look at his body shape, everything was wrong. And nobody picked up Bruce again, and he just stooped in, bang, in the corner, and away he went. It was amazing. And obviously the Brian Kidd celebrations after that.
Well, he was a definite legend. There's no doubt about that, and he is right to be on the list. My first choice, I find, again, like you, Stu, it's very difficult because every time you think of someone, in the back of your mind, you go, what about this one? I've got to be honest, with my first choice, I've surprised myself with what I'm going to go with here. I'm going to give it to him, I think, largely because we spoke about Dennis Irwin being as humble as he is. I think his opposite number on the right side is equally that. I've never seen a Manchester United player who is so self-deprecating about his own abilities as a footballer, but yet he's one of our top 10 appearance makers. And he was just, I think, sublime. I think David Beckham doesn't become the global superstar that he was without having this absolute workhorse covering for him time and time again. And I've got to give it to Sir Gary Neville, which I did not think I was going to be doing when I came on the show. But the more I think about it, and the the more I realised how integral he was to the defence, I've thrown him in there, and I've surprised myself. Like I say, wasn't seeing that coming. But as we're then on our way to moving back around, I'm going to take it even further back because, of course, we have a defender who's had more appearances even than him, and I'm a big fan of trying to make sure we include the history of the team as well, and not just through Premier League periods. So for me, when it comes to the vote, the person I would like to throw in there is Big Bill Foulkes. I think a superb defender, amazing, 18 years at the club, just absolutely nailed it. A survivor, obviously, of the Munich air disaster and integral to the rebuild that Sir Matt Busby had to do. And I think that any top 10 as this, well, top 8 effectively as this will become until we get that 5th person in, has to be Big Bill. But going back in the order that we came, obviously, Stu, who would have been your second choice? Who goes into the vote?
Yeah, look, so I had Bill Foulkes as well. Benny was right about Harry Gregg. I'm going to be really honest about Harry Gregg, and I'm sure Benny and Johnny K would both agree with me. He's the forgotten goalkeeper. Of all the greats that Manchester United have had between the sticks, he's the forgotten goalkeeper, and I think we should all, me particularly, should hang my head in shame because Harry Gregg, yeah, I mean, you just can't say what he meant to the club and the fans, and Bill Foulkes is also fits into that category. So that's an absolutely fantastic call, Buzz. So I did have Bill Foulkes on my list. Again, hugely difficult. So I'm going to go with Rio. Now you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised with me and Rio because he's not my type of player, obviously. You know, he's Nemanja Vidic is my type of player. But I've always said the centre backs are made on a partnership. And if we were to have, looking at where we are today, looking at the guys that we've picked, who would I put alongside Steve Bruce? And that would be Rio Ferdinand. And there's a reason for that. They're a really good mix together. Bill Foulkes was an absolute brute, Baz. We know that. I couldn't put Foulkes and Brucey together. I couldn't really put Stam and Bruce together because Stam's a mixture, actually, Johnny K, of a Rio Ferdinand, of a Steve Bruce, of a Gary Pallister.
Yeah.
I just feel that Rio Ferdinand, with his calmness, his ability to play the ball, was better than Bruce at playing the ball, but he's a bit of a pansy when it comes to getting his face in there. So that's what you need. You need that collective partnership. And I just think Rio would probably, he didn't get my top 5 at all. Bill Foulkes would have been next on the list for me. So fair play, Baz, on that, mate. Fair play. So I would go for Rio on that one. I love Vidic to bits, but he wouldn't fit alongside Bruce because I think Bruce was more integrated into Manchester United at that time. As good as Vidic was, I don't think he ever integrated himself into the club fabric, whereas Stevie Bruce for me did. So it would be Rio Ferdinand.
Very good. Johnny K, who would you throw in as your man?
Some incredible shout. Roger Byrne was an incredible fullback for us. A lot of people, he's in many ways, I mean, he's seen as the Busby Bay captain, but he's not seen in the light of, he was probably one of our greatest ever players, you know, in the fullback. And a lot of people, he was the closest we had to Dennis Irwin, actually. You know, he was in regards to how his general play, his consistency, that kind of thing. I mean, like Stu's mentioned, Noel Campbell in the 60s, he was a brilliant defender as well. But in terms of the modern era, from what I've seen, I don't think you can ignore Vidic. I know I can understand Stu's point.
No, this is my point. I'm not ignoring him. I know. Him. But what do you do with a small group? It's like Yeah. What do you do?
I cannot believe I found a subject that has reduced Stu's Willie in silence.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I just-
it is hard to pick top 5 defenders if it's factoring fullbacks and centre halves. But I just think, again,
Here's a question, Johnny, and it's a genuine question. This,
yeah,
and I'm Baz, you're going to kill me, I know.
No, I doubt
And
it.
Benny answers, "But what do you do with Duncan Edwards? Because we all know that
That's
Duncan
what I mean.
Edwards was the very
That's what
first
I mean.
hybrid. He was the very first hybrid. People bang on about
Yeah,
Agate, they bang on about Rodri, they bang on about blah 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 blah. But he's the original hybrid that could play CB.
Agreed.
Oh fucking hell! Sorry,
Yeah.
centre back
that's what I mean.
and centre midfield. So I just
It's so hard. I agree, but
possible.
I think the thing with Edwards, he wasn't. It was probably. I mean, like you say, he was playing multiple position, but I think he's probably slightly more of a midfielder than a
That's where I would place him.
defender. So
Yeah, I agree.
That's
with
where
that.
I would place him. That's
because
exactly
he
where I
could
would
play
place
all
him.
over the pitch, whereas I think Vidic was integral. I think Stu's right about the partnership thing. Ferdinand Vidic was an incredible partnership, as was Bruce and Pallister. You can't underestimate just how important partnerships were. I mean, if you think of what Jaap Stam had, you won't really think Henningberg and Ronnie Johnson would be the top defenders, but hey, they were brilliant partners for Stam. They won the treble with us. So, but for me, I think Vidic just is general. It's. I mean, I think
Gone for Vidic over Roger Burn.
his autobiography. Pardon.
You've gone for Vidic over Roger Burn, just to confirm.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
I wrote Roger Burn down, then you went in the morning.
It's hard to
say.
Because the problem is with Burn is there's not that much footage of the babes, and it's hard. So I'm basing it on what people who did see him. This is what they said about him, but it's hard to say for definite how brilliant they were without all this camera footage we have today. Whereas I grew up with Vidic, and I thought he was an incredible defender, so that's the reason why.
But Benny, we'll go for your second one as well. But I mean, just before you do, to Stu's point about Duncan Edwards, which maybe somebody you're about to choose, we'll find out. But I think we were just robbed of him too early, and as a result, over the longevity of a career, I think if we'd have seen all of Duncan Edwards, I've just got no doubt that he'd be the first name on our list. But he was stolen from us, and I'm sure I've told this story before. But there was an old Sheffield Wednesday defender called Peter Swan. And when I lived up in the Midlands, I got a bit scared after 6 months living up there. So I came back down south where I felt safe and buff amongst my own. And I spent some time in that pub with this guy and he was a brilliant bloke. And I asked him who was the greatest player that he'd ever played against. And his answer was Duncan Edwards. And I said, how would you rank him in terms of, just in general? Was that the case amongst all of the people that you used to play with? Or is that just because he's one of the biggest names you played against? He said, no, just anybody I speak to always says Duncan Edwards. And he was just an absolute giant, literally, of the game. So he was on my list, but he was on my list in a very separate, on his own list, really, because just didn't get enough of him to be able to, you look at some of these others we've mentioned, that, Nemanja Vidic, Bill Foulkes, Rio Ferdinand, Dennis Irwin, Jaap Stam, Steve Bruce, Gary Neville, just like, I've got to be over 100 games for each and every single one of them. There's just an absolute plethora of footage for that. So, Benny, who's going to get that final spot for you?
Big Johnny Commode Day. He mentioned Henningberg, and that was one of my picks. Was going to be Henningberg because you think about that '99 treble side. You always had to have a solid backup to Johnson and Stam, and you don't get more solid than Henningberg. He had some storming matches in the Champions League for United. I was going to give an honorary shout out for Phil Jones as well, but the, unfortunately, it didn't work out too well for Phil. But Henningberg, I think, is one of the most. I think he's 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 one of the most. But Chrissy Smalling, or Mike Smalling, as Mr. Vanguard would say. But no, for me, just a little bit outside the box. I was a bit gutted when Johnny Camo came with Henningberg, because nobody mentioned Henningberg until Johnny.
Sorry.
Nah, you're all right, mate. You're all good.
Yeah.
But I think Henningberg, so Mr. Reliable, yeah, Box just said it there. It's Inter Milan in 1999. He had a storming match.
Yeah.
Played one off the line as well, if memory serves me correctly. It's Inter Milan.
Actually, it was in the first leg, and then I think in the second leg there was a crossing where the striker just batted in, and he just hooked it away at the last minute. So yeah, brilliant.
Played right back as well, didn't he?
Yeah, did, yeah.
Wasn't he right back at Blackburn, if I remember rightly?
Played both.
Yeah.
If you remember at the time, Colin Hendry was the main one. David May. They switched between Henningberg and May depending on whether Hendry was fit. But yeah, versatile, very versatile.
He was very versatile. You're not wrong. But I can't argue with that. Absolutely superb player. And Simon, I mean, you've missed 50 minutes. So the good news is it's on YouTube. It's all rewindable, so you can watch it back. Don't worry. We won't spoil it for you. We've picked our top 4 goalkeepers and our top 4 defenders of all time for Manchester United. And we've got ourselves a little list of 4 that we're going to stick to a Twitter poll, I think. I might even throw one out onto TikTok as well now that we've hit our 800th follower and we have the ability to go live. We could potentially have that discussion on there. But that's what we've done. But you've come in at just the right time, Si, because we're going to start a new subject. And that new subject is, you'll find this hard to believe, midfield. As you can see, I'm an organised man. I like to work from the back to the front, a little bit like Eric Ten Hag and his passing style. So we've made it through to the midfield. Some might argue that that's where it stops under the current regime, but we'll find out if there's a midfield for Manchester United. And Johnny K, it's your turn to be number 1. So you get the opportunity to pick who you think, and this is pressure, who you think is the greatest midfielder of all time for Manchester United. Luckily, there's only 2 or 3 to choose from, surely.
Yeah, this is such a difficult one because there's multiple. It gets harder and harder with each topic. However, I think you got to consider the impact and the role of the person who I often regard as Mr. Manchester United, who played for us on the pitch and off the pitch. And I think you got Sir Bobby Charlton. I think he was just probably, it's hard because Duncan Edwards is obviously some would regard as the greatest English player. For me, if you look at his general career, I think Sir Bobby Charlton is probably the greatest English player we've ever produced in terms of like what he's won, what he's on for the game. You know, you look at Munich, him surviving it, he lost many of his best friends, and the way he used that to propel success. And then obviously the finale was the European Cup final in 6. I don't think, if you're looking at great midfielders for United, you cannot forget the role Sir Bobby Charlton played. So for me, he's a shoo-in.
Again, I mean, this is going to be a tricky one. As Bartime says here, is a midfielder different to a winger in this? And I feel like for this one, in order to make our life that little bit easier, this is going to be tricky. We are going to have to come up with that because it depends. It's up to you how you want to categorize those wingers, because some of them play so high up that you would have to call them forwards and attackers. Some of them play more in that midfield 3 area. I think we'll all agree that Charlton is a midfielder, but we shall see. So we'll have that debate. If somebody mentions it and we think maybe they're more of a forward, we'll come to a gentlemanly agreement about that. We're all friends here, so it's not a problem. So yeah, it's up to you. You know, football is in the eye of the beholder for me. Stu, who do you think deserves to go into our top 5?
Right, this is ultimately impossible, and nobody will agree. So by the time we put our top 5 together, it'll be completely. You know, where do you start? You know,
I genuinely feel like this day is breaking me.
You're killing me. You know, Brian Robson, of course, who I model my game on, when I was growing up. But I'm going to have to go with Duncan Edwards. He has to appear in this list. He has to appear. Now, everybody in the comments, you've got to cast your mind back to Manchester United didn't start in the 90s. Manchester United was born in the late 1800s, and you have to understand that. And there's been some phenomenal footballers that have come before the likes of Scholes, the likes of Giggs, Rooney, Ronaldo, etc., etc., etc. There are players that deserve a mantle, and Duncan Edwards is one of them. And I can't look past him. I would love to put in Brian Robson because he was my idol when I was growing up. Paul Ince, Roy Keane. But, you know, you've got to look at the technician that we had once in Arnold Muren. He was an absolute technician on the football. He was wonderful. Jesper Olsen played out wide for us. Wonderful little imp of a player. Very left-footed, but very, very skillful. Very slim, very slight. Very skillful. And we've had some not so great players who play for us in the middle of the park. You know, the likes of Jemba, etc. We could laugh at. But you know, Phil Neville, very, very versatile. Was instrumental in pushing Reyes out and making sure we upset Arsenal's winning streak that time. Kicked him off the park. He's been brilliant. Nicky Butt. People don't seem to think of Nicky Butt. Owen Hargreaves, you know, I could go on forever. So for me, if Duncan Edwards isn't mentioned and isn't in this top 5, it would be absolute criminal. Benny, I apologise, old friend, if that's who you wanted. Same with you, Bazza. But for me, he has to be in the conversation. He's got to be in the conversation.
I was not going to necessarily pick Duncan Edwards for that one. So, but I do agree with you. He feels like one of those names that does just have to be somewhere within what is effectively going to be a top 20. And again, the sad thing about this is that when you come to goalkeepers, I said it was easy because it is. There's one position and you get the opportunity to pick 5 and they're all in the same position. Here, you've got people, you know, you could potentially go for a top 20 in those positions going forward for the next one. So we recognise that, you know, but equally, I do agree with you. This is my worst nightmare. I agree with you on that one. I just think there's too many midfielders that are just not going to make it, and it's no reflection on them for absolutely sure. I mean, I've just written down a list of 4, and even that doesn't include players that I'm still thinking. Now, I'll admit to you, top of my mind, one of my thoughts is Ryan Giggs. Does he go as an attacker or does he go as a midfielder? I always
play
remember
both.
So that's
Scholes is the same, Baz, because Scholes started out life as Johnny K and Benny will tell you, as a striker, as a 10.
Absolutely. So it's going to be incredibly tricky. But working on the theory that I believe he's going to get in somewhere in this conversation, I've got to go for the person who, for me, is the one you've just mentioned, Stu. Like, everybody always goes, "Who's going to be Gerard or Lampard?" And the answer just genuinely is neither. The answer is the ginger-haired assassin himself, Mr. Paul Scholes. He's literally mentioned by every player of his era as being the best player that they've seen in there. Zinedine Zidane mentioned him. Pele mentioned him. All of these players, George Best mentioned him. And again, just because he's quiet, unassuming, doesn't go around trying to do too much, occasionally questionable when doing punditry duties, but who isn't? We can't all be perfect. We do the same here on this channel sometimes. So for me, it's got to be. So he doesn't need me to big him up for what he's done. He's just absolutely outrageously decorated. And I think it's time he gets his flowers. So I'm going Paul Scholes, but Benny, you get the chance to get someone else in, and I feel incredibly sorry for you here because it was the last one that's definitely getting in.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, Paul Scholes, if I may just continue there for a second, he's the best player I've ever seen in my lifetime in a Manchester United shirt. Honestly, you could just watch him. I used to always say when I used to go to Old Trafford, I could watch Paul Scholes all day long and not get bored. Just watch him play the game of football and how easy it makes it look. So I agree with you on that one, Baz. But if I had to pick one, and again, it's difficult because what do you interpret as a winger, as an outside forward, as a forward in the forward line? But I think predominantly you would probably say in the olden days he's a winger, and that's another Ballon d'Or winner, George Best. I think Bestie is possibly, for me, Sir Bobby Charlton's the greatest United player of all time. No question about that. But I think the next one down would be, if he was going to have a second place, would probably Georgie Best. The first superstar footballer on these shows, the first sort of footballer to break into that sort of glamorous lifestyle where, where he was just everywhere, wasn't he? He was like, it was nicknamed El Beetle, the fifth Beatle. He was just phenomenal, playing on pitches that were mud baths, basically, going around players that were like they were not even, they were non-existent. Just dancing around players, making it look so easy. Bestie, I think, had it all. To be fair, he just had it. He just had a great way of playing the game, in a fun and free way as well. He was never shackled. He never had he never played with shackles on or never played within himself. He was always one to go out there and to entertain the crowd. And I just think it'd be a fool's errand of me not to mention him and not to go for him, because obviously everybody else just took my other picks that would have been on my list anyway. So, but I just think Georgie Best. Listen, a Ballon d'Or winner, you can't get a European Cup winner, Ballon d'Or winner. You can't get any better than that, can you?
No, I don't think you can, to be fair. And I mean, you mentioned George Best. I jested earlier about how, I moved to the Midlands for a short while and then dropped back down very quickly. But one of the things I've always been envious for a lot of Manchester United fans, and certainly Benny and John and and Stu, you're a season ticket holder as well, is the distance that it is for me to get to Manchester time and again. It's a very tricky trek to make, and one that I've not been fortunate enough to do as much as I would like to. That there is nothing I would rather do than follow this great club across the world, and sadly my job's never been capable of providing that manner of lifestyle, so it's a shame. But the one thing I could do is that when George Best was fatally ill, basically, and that was his way out, he was in Fulham. He was in that area in the hospital down there, and I just remember feeling incredibly drawn to that place. Now, I very rarely go in for these sorts of things, but I went down there and I left myself a scarf and we waited, and at the moment he did pass away, there was a lot of people out there, and I just hope that he knew just how brilliantly loved he was by the fans of this football club, because he absolutely was, as you just said, the best. There's no getting away from that. But the good news about you going last on this one, Benny, is that you get to go first on the repechage event, which is to get the other four in. So he would be your second person.
I'm so glad I don't know if anyone's mentioned him, but he was my first ever footballing idol when I was growing up, and that's Lee Sharp. But for me, before even Giggsy was even on the scene, Lee Sharp had that left wing on lock. Signing for Torquay United, little old Torquay United, obviously, it might not have worked out for him in the end, whereas the Premier League era really started kicking off. But he had some phenomenal performances against Arsenal at Highbury. Absolutely battered them. He's battered Everton at Goodison Park as well. I also think that that night in Rotterdam, it was absolutely quality there as well. And obviously his celebration, probably the greatest celebration of all time, the old Sharpie shuffle. But yeah, he was my first ever hero. You know, before Giggsy sort of came on the scene, my first ever one was Lee Sharp, and then obviously him and Giggsy became best mates, and then you know they were like the Spice Boys, if it were at that time. You know, the Giggsy and Sharp were all the girls' favourites and everything. You know, obviously, like you know. Just a shame. I think injury did pay to Sharpie as well in the end before we transferred him out to Leeds United. I think he picked up a few niggly injuries, and I don't think he ever got back to the heights that he once was, especially around the early 90s. So I just thought I'd definitely put in my second back. Well, my second choice is Lee Sharp.
Well, I'm very impressed with throwing him in there. He wasn't on my list, so that was a good shout, because it's nice when people mention ones that you haven't necessarily thought of and make you go, And yeah, you're not wrong. That corner flag took a beating whenever Lee Sharp was on form. So where to go with this? I've got two names left on my list that I felt had to come on here. And now it's just a case of which one do I say just in case the other one doesn't get picked. And we've hit that horrible age-old argument that seems to be had time and time again on this mortal coil of ours, which is, of course, who's the better central midfielder and captain? Is it Roy Keane or is it Brian Robson? And this is where I potentially lose a lot of points from some people. But mine has always been on this one, Roy Keane. And I'm going to have to throw him into the mix. I mean, I don't think I lose too many. I think they call them aura points nowadays. But certainly the people that prefer the early days of Manchester United as opposed to the current probably won't go with that. But for me personally, he just bled and led this team in the same way that Robbo did, but I saw more of Roy, I suppose, is the thing that probably does it for me. I saw Roy Keane week in, week out. He was always on the telly. You didn't see as much of Brian Robson when it was just a telly because there wasn't that many games. And so for that reason, I'm having to go Roy Keane, but I'm hoping that one of the remainders here, Mr. Stuart John, is going to pull me out of this massive hole, but we'll find out because they might have somebody else to go for. We haven't even mentioned Eric Jemba yet. So where are you going with this one, Stu?
Well, my idol was Robbo. So Robbo is there. But I'm going to put a big smile on Benjamin's face now when I mention the name Big Norm.
Oh, Whiteside, how do I forget?
Yeah, Big Norm Whiteside. Now, Benny knows what I like. You all know my type of game and what I like. And, you know, I followed Manchester United for years and years and years. I've stood in the Cop back in the 80s when I scalped a ticket just to watch Manchester United versus Liverpool. I've gone on a Liverpool Supporters Club bus from Telford to as the only Man United fan to watch Man United v Liverpool. I've done it all when it comes to following United, but I could do it back in the 80s. In the 90s you could do it, but I remember back in 88, and you know I'm in the Cop, and Robbo's popped us 1-0 up after about 27 seconds, something like that. We've gone 3-1 down, and they brought on Big Norm, and he's absolutely crunched McMahon. McMahon thought he was the big tough guy at the time, and Whiteside's come on and he's pointed at him. As soon as he's had the ball, he's fucking smashed him hard, and I was up like fucking anything. Then I realised where I was, and I was in a world of fucking pain for a long time. I was being punched, kicked, and all that kind of stuff. But you stand your ground. You have to stand your ground. So I stood my ground, and fucking people were giving me all loads of shit. But they were okay with me because they're 3-1 up. Then the game changed. On that McMahon crunch, the game fucking changed. We ended up drawing 3 each. And it's the fable game where I'm going to call him Big Gordy Strachan. Scores
You love
a
it.
leveler 3-3, and he wanders up to the cop, and he does that, and I thought, oh, fuck, Jesus, and they're fucking at me again, so I'm having to literally crawl my way out the fucking the cop, and I was being chased down the fucking road and all that kind of nonsense. But that was what football's all about. You don't get any of that shit today. You're not allowed to have that wonderful experience of watching your team come from 3-1 down to the champions at the time, and and just experiencing everything, pleasure, pain, death, or near death, but you did it. But the reason I'm hesitating, Baz, is because I want to ask the lads a question. Was Whiteside an attacker or was he a midfielder? Because whatever you answer will determine where I go, because I'm not 100% sure.
Well, the interesting thing with him was he did. I think he's remembered more for his goals, but my dad remembers a certain. I think the first time he played in midfield was we were playing away at Arsenal, and in 1985, and I think Big Norm came on to play midfield, and my dad was at the away end, and he was saying like, anyway, Whiteside played in midfield, and then he scored a screamer at I think it was the North Bank, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an North Bank game,
1-0, and that's when my father and a lot of people started to play. Oh, we can play midfield. If I'm not mistaken, did he play midfield for that 85 final? Right.
He was more of a 10. He was more of a 10 there.
Yeah. So
I think the honest answer is it can be both.
Yeah,
it can be whichever you want it to be, Stu.
Yeah, when he scored in the League Cup against Liverpool, if you remember the chest and the turn and the fly down, he was up front then. So, are you happy, lads? If I put him in midfield as my,
I'm happy.
So I love Robbo, Baz. I'm not gonna. I can't bail you out on this because I love Whiteside as well. So it'd be Whiteside.
Oh, no, Whiteside's been put in, which means John Commode. If you want to come back next week, you're going to need to say Brian Robson. I mean,
so what I'll say is that I'm not going to pick him, but I'll make an honourable mention for Paddy Crerand. Yeah. He was an incredible midfielder. And like you mentioned with Stuart Bilfos and Harry Gregg, in many ways, Paddy Crerand's the forgotten man as well, and he was massively integral in the 60s. And I think I think your catchphrase was when Crerand played well, United played well, and I think he was. Again, I think he's massively underrated for what he achieved, and I don't think we would nearly have had as much success without if he wasn't in there. But you can't ignore Nobby Styles either. Although I think he was a bit more defensive, was he? But yeah,
great midfielder.
Because
don't forget, Ronnie, he like Joe Jordan, he used to take his teeth out before.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Paddy Crerand was an incredible player. But you know what, Barry? Because I do think Robson was an incredible player, though, wasn't he? I think it is.
I can't tell if I'm sweating because this top is so tight. I genuinely thought
I'll put you at ease because I know you got hypertension now because you know this. But yeah, I will say, I think Robson was an incredible player, wasn't he? He was just the ultimate all-round player. He's probably, I'm not saying he was, but he's probably the closest thing we had to Duncan Edwards in terms of like the whole, he could play anywhere on the pitch and do a job and everything. So for me, you can't ignore Robson.
On a genuine question, had I said Brian Robson, would you have said Roy Keane, or would there have been somebody else that you would have gone for?
I would have probably, I was strongly considering Paddy Crerand. But it's just it's difficult. It's really difficult. Dan's probably disappointed we didn't say Beckham either.
Yes, very true.
I may have gone Ince because Ince again had the the way that he played had a real influence on my game. You know, when I was a midfielder, real influence. So I may have gone into as well, but
surprised no one said Cristiano Ronaldo because he was a winger when he was at United.
Correct.
More than he was a forward.
In the first spell.
Yeah, well, in the first spell. Yeah, you're right there. Johnny Commode's on the ball again.
Yes.
we all remember Bolton, though, don't we?
Yeah.
Those little tiptoes.
Oh yeah, I was there that day.
Of course, as well. He's not been mentioned, but certainly a shout out for Nobby Styles as well. Who was
yeah, well,
Andre Kanchelskis. He was rapid in.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
One from the Babes. Peggy.
But then,
Peggy.
Stuart, I'm surprised. You had Steve Coppell and Gordon Hill and
Lou McCarroll.
Yeah, I know, but this is the problem. But what about Peggy from the Babes?
Pegg, yeah. Johnny Berry. Johnny Berry.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of else we have, but Charlie Mitten. He was
Charlie Mitten,
as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot to mention. I think, lads, we are going to end up having to do another one of these at some point.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of my what I think is a burgeoning OCD, we are going to finish the positions and we'll go into the strikers because I don't think I'll be able to handle it if we just do three and then none of us know who's going to be in the strikers. We get this on TikTok. This would be the point where they go follow for part 2. And I know people do it because they want people to follow them. I'd rather you follow this because we give you complete and proper data. So we're going to do it. We are going to go for the strikers. And of course, Big Stu, you are leading us off on this one. What say you, Stu?
There's only one to go for.
Wow. So the defence and the midfield is really difficult, but the strikers, there's only one to choose from.
There's only one to choose from. And my pick is very, very simple. Ruud van Best Charlton. That's how you do it, fellas. When you've got the absolutely impossible task of splitting.
The good news is both Best and Charlton are already in.
Yeah, I know. 3 of our greatest strikers, and Benny and Johnny Commode were absolutely right. Great midfielders as well, but we both know they played up top. And everybody who knows me knows I think that Ruud is by far our best dinner caller. When you look at our plethora of strikers, Rooney, Ronaldo, Hughes, McClare, Stapleton, Beardsley for the very, very short time he was with us, Peter Beardsley, York, Cole, Sheringham, Solskjaer. I could go on forever. You could go on forever and build 3 teams out of them.
And he's not playing by the rules, as you can see.
Yeah, out of them, and so I thought to myself, who would I pick? And I would pick Ruud van Nistelrooy, but you cannot not pick Charlton and Best. So there is this phenomenal player, and he's called Frankenstein, Benny. And it's the Frankenstein that is Ruud van Best Charlton. That is the player. Taking them apart, as the lads have already picked Best and Charlton, and I'm so happy that you guys did, because I felt one of those would miss out and it would have been an absolute fucking travesty. So I'm going to go with Ruud van Nistelrooy on the basis that you guys picked them for midfield. And do I need to discuss why I've gone for Ruud? Because
absolutely not. He's just there. There he is. I own 0 paintings in my life. It's not something I go for. But when I was younger, and Ruud, of course, had arrived, the paintings were there. You used to get like these little catalogues that would come through to you as a member. And my birthday was coming around. My mum said, "What do you want?" And I think she fell off her chair when I said, "I'd like a painting, please, Mum," because it wasn't something you expected at the age of 13, 14 to be asking for this sort of stuff. She's like, "What are you on about?" And I showed her it. I said, "This one, it's limited edition because there's only an X amount of them that are going to be made." And that was what I got. And it has been my pride and joy in terms of going on my wall ever since, because to me, the greatest striker ever for Manchester United. Yeah. We didn't have him for longer. So
I mean, the lads know, Baz, I'd never have a name on the back of my shirt or anything like that. That's not what I do. The lads know all this anyway. It's just me. But I would have Rude on my shirt like that. There's just something about it. What I like about him was he was aggressive. He was not particularly great with the ball at his feet, but he didn't need to be, because he had the best pair of ears and the best pairs of eyes in world football at that time when it came to finishing. What I mean by that, he could pinpoint when Beckham was about to strike that ball, and he would know instantaneously exactly where that ball's going to be and where he needs to be. And 9 out of 10 times when it got to him, he's peeling away with his arms in the air, and he's gone. People always and they focus on that Fulham goal, which is a great goal, and I like it because he started off by elbowing somebody in the throat. So if you're going to do it properly, and he did, and he wheezed his way around. Never done it before, never done it again, by the way. Never did it after that. But it was a wonderful finish. He was off balance, and he knew exactly where to place the ball.
One against Bales was good as well.
That, for me, I prefer the Arsenal goal because he's up against arguably the two best centre halves in the country, and he nutmegged, was it Campbell, and he
nutmegged Campbell,
yeah. And for me, if I had to pick my favourite Van Nistelrooy goal, I'll put that one above the Fulham one because it was in a critical game.
No, I wasn't talking about that as my favourite goal. I was talking about most people like that as a goal. I actually like it when he would ghost in at the in between the two centre halves.
Yeah.
That is a lost art today. There's two lost arts in world football today. That is, one is Andy Gray, probably the best exponent of the diving header ever to be seen in the game. He would launch himself 3 foot off the ground, and he would always score with a diving header. Best exponent ever. And Ruud van Nistelrooy getting in between the two centre halves and smacking one in with his head. You just don't see that anymore. That the art of real football is gone. Everybody thinks there's all this tippy tappy fucking bollocks. John, you made a great point. Sorry, Baz, I'm on my way now. I apologise.
Here he goes.
You made a great point, right? And I listened to a debate on the radio yesterday. Why does every manager want to play like Pep Guardiola? Pep Guardiola's just looked back in the history of the game, and he's made that same thing, because Johnny Kay was absolutely right. And that was, and Gary Bailey used to do it all the time. He'd roll it out to the fullback, and the fullback would pass it to the centre half. And believe it or not, the centre half would pass it to the other fullback.
And this is what I mean. I've read the Matt Busby biography, and he broke the record transfer for the goalkeeper 3 times because he played with Frank Swift at Man City, who was famous for collecting the ball and throwing it out. This new concept is not a new thing. He bought Harry Gregg, he bought Alex Depney. He bought these players for that purpose. It's nothing new.
Pat Jennings in the 50s, Pat Jennings was the biggest hands ever for a goalkeeper. Pat Jennings could do that, couldn't he?
I think Frank Swift could catch it with one hand.
I think so, yeah. And Bert Trautmann, the City keeper that broke his neck, he could catch it like that. But the point is, they all used to roll it out to the fullback. Or Schmeichel, in his day, he'd get it and he'd launch it, wouldn't he? He'd use his feet, he'd launch it. That's, believe it or not, playing out from the back. Sorry, Baz, I completely have gone off track, and I'm going to...
Yes.
Absolutely fine. Honestly, I live for this on this type of show. It's all good. That's why I've not planned anything other than these 4 things. Because it just meant you could go wherever you want to go with it. And I'm open for it. If this ends up being a little bit longer than normal, it's not a drama. Fun fact, I believe, Benny, you can save a football with that beard as well. I imagine you've got 2 or 3 hiding in that at the moment.
Yeah, probably could actually, mate. Yeah, it's a bit of a hedge, isn't it?
But it's magnificent. I'm going to go with my one, and I don't listen. I got called Harry Hill earlier, but I'm not having it. Now, on TikTok, we had to rank. So we had to. Nobody was forcing me to do it, but I chose to rank the best number 7s for Manchester United, and I've got told off. Why isn't Brian Robson on there? As if I made the filter, and as if I was the one who chose which people will go into it. And very good. Look at you both. You managed to get in there with Barry Hill. Good. Well done. 2 from the same. I'm very impressed. Well played. 3 of you on the trot. I'm rubbing off on you all. Well done. But my number one pick was the man I'm about to say. It wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo. It wasn't David Beckham. It was the one and only Eric Cantona. And I would argue in the modern day, it's the only choice you can make. The person that was having a go at me about putting Ronaldo in second, I simply took him on a magical history tour and said, without Eric Cantona, there would be no Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United, because we just simply wouldn't have followed the arc that we did. And I just feel that he is, well, if he's not in the top 5, then it's no point publishing anything of what we've just done here, because there's just no credibility to it. So for that, I'm going to throw him in there. He's an absolute legend. You won't see him quite so well because of but he's below the badge. There he is. That's Eric, just below there as well. So very few people, but I've obviously got a bit of a thing for strikers. David Beckham's up there as well, but I didn't buy that, so that was. So yeah, Eric Cantona for me. Benny, where would you go?
Someone mentioned in the comments earlier, but Tommy Taylor,
Yes.
131 goals in 191 games.
You've
And people that saw him for the Buzzy Baby era
Yes.
said he was the best centre forward in Manchester United history.
Yeah.
So, arguably, with them sort of numbers, if you're talking Rue's numbers and you're talking Tommy Taylor's numbers, obviously football's changed a whole world from Tommy Taylor to Rue Van Nistelrooy. But what a front two they would be, by the way, absolutely lethal front two in terms of goal scoring ability. But I just thought Tommy Taylor, you know, possibly the first sort of ultimate goal scoring predator, if you like. You know, could score. He's very good with his head as well, I believe. You know, Henry knows footballers that were like medicine, but I think someone put it in the comments earlier on as well about medicine balls, weren't they? Like, you know, the weight of it, especially when it was raining as well.
They had
those leather balls get heavy.
They had laces, Benny.
Yeah, the laces as well, yeah.
Tommy Taylor, I bet you any money he's got a scar on his head. Where he's headed with a I promise you, people think I'm joking, but it absolutely 100% happened. They'd have little scars, tiny little scars or indentations if they caught the ball at the wrong kind of angle, really. Honestly, you're absolutely right. Tommy Taylor is an immense shout. What a forward that'd be. Taylor and Rude.
Yeah, Tommy Taylor, I think you mentioned Rude, he has that goal ratio. He averages 2 goals every 3 games. And only Tommy Taylor has a similar goal rate to what Van Nistelrooy had. So, yeah, brilliant.
What a shout, Benny. What a shout. Can you imagine? Can we get those 2 back?
Yeah, can we please? We need a centre forward or 2, don't we?
God, don't we? Well, yeah, bless him.
I just a centre forward would be lovely, just about now. But there we go. So far we've got Rue Van Nistelrooy, Eric Cantona, and Tommy Taylor. God, now, I've got to be honest, I would have probably Tommy Taylor as a shout from John Commode if I was sitting there going, "Who?"
I probably need to come now.
No,
where's John going to go?
Back up, actually. So, I mean, we've had so many through the years. You've had Andy Cole, you've had Sheringham was mentioned, Solskjaer, Mark Hughes as well. You know, he was
Love Hughesy.
Yeah, but you can't. A lot of people say, I do agree. A lot of people don't think of the past a lot of the time, and for me, you can't ignore the present. And for me, you got to look at the impact that our greatest ever goal scorer had, and that's Wayne Rooney, because his overall game, he was just a fantastic all-round player, and I just think, he had issues from time to time. He wasn't the best out-and-out goal scorer, but I think as impact in the team and the fact that he's our greatest ever goal scorer, and until Kane beat him, he was also England's top goal scorer as well. For me, his overall game was incredible, and he could play in any position and all that kind of thing. But for me, you can't underestimate the role Rooney had in the the decade he was in, 2004 to 2017. And for me, I think in some ways he's underappreciated as well. Maybe not by United fans, but in the general football, they say, oh, he was overrated, didn't quite do it for England and that kind of thing. But you can't ignore his record: 5 Premier League titles, a European Cup. He won every trophy possible. And for me, I think you can't ignore that. So for me, I'd say Wayne Rooney.
Well, it's a very good shout. And as Simon's just said here, I've looked on the list of 12 greatest ever strikers, and Rooney is number 1 on that list. So that's not a terrible shout at all. The good news, John, is that you now also get the chance to throw in the player for the repechage. So who is going in? I'm in bated breath here. I'm going to write down on a sheet of paper what I think you're going to say.
No, I think yeah, because I don't
write it down. I've written it down. Let's see if I know my Johnny K or not. Who are you going for?
I'm going for Gary Birtles. No, it's you probably read it, but Dennis Law. Yes, it's got to be Dennis Law, wasn't it? I mean,
it would have been my second choice.
But Ballon d'Or, incredible goal scorer. But him and Tommy Taylor are probably our best 2 strikers prior to. I mean, you had Dennis Violet as well. He was incredible. Jack Rowley. So Bobby Charles started as a striker as well. But you can't ignore the impact. Dennis Law had unfortunately did have a lot of injuries. Otherwise, he probably would be considered the greatest striker ever, possibly if he wasn't injured as often. But you can't ignore his impact, his goals. Probably the best striker ever in the 6-yard box. I think most of his goals you'll find were in the 6-yard box, and that's predatory. So for me, you gotta put him in there.
I've got to be honest, the chat has just gone off. I mean, they are, I think they've gone into let's just list every striker that Manchester United have ever had. It's entertaining in its own right. But there we go. Let's go over, and I'm going to write one down now for you, Stu. Just going to see if I feel like I know my Stu, but I'm not so sure. I have written down a player. Who are you choosing as your number 2?
Yeah, see, I've really struggled with this because I would go with Dennis as well, because that's hell of a shout. And I'm going to name a striker who I think would have outperformed most of them, not rude, but most of them, if we got him at the right time. And then it was the one and only Edinson Cavani. For the short period we had with him, he showed us a way to goal that we hadn't seen since Rude. And we just got him at the wrong time in his career. We never had him at the right time in his career. And I felt if we had him at the right time in his career, it would be the one. So I'm going to go with, and it's a bit of an obvious one. I'm sorry, Benny and Barry and everyone else, but Ronaldo. Again, you can't move away from what he's done for the club, what he did for the club when he went to striker. He was absolutely phenomenal when he was playing up front before he left for Real Madrid. What he did after Manchester United was just something as a footballer dreams are made of. And I would never say that ever in my wildest dreams. I would never say that. To come back and still net 20 plus goals for us in an abysmal team just shows the type of person he is. So you wouldn't have written that down, Barry. I wouldn't think.
I did not. Can you guess who I wrote down?
Go on.
That would be Dimitar Berbatov.
Yes, no, and you would be right there, because I love him, but the Edinson Cavani one, I'm sure you may not agree with me, you guys, but I think if we got him at the right time, he would have gone on to
I think
Why-
you could argue maybe if we got Zlatan a few years earlier as well.
he would have gone on to rival Rooney for
Oh,
me,
he was
Cavani, because of the
incredible.
way.
I think-
But I think Ronaldo really, on those grounds, has to be in the conversation, albeit he wouldn't get into the top 5 because, the 4 that we've picked, geez, they're just mouth-watering. Every single one of those players are mouth-watering.
I mean, it comes to something when you mention the names Dennis Law and Cristiano Ronaldo, and they're not in your top 4.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how you can't fit Law in there, isn't it? It's unbelievable. But,
yeah.
So you got to credit where credit's due to Ronaldo. What a phenomenal career! 900 goals. Scored his 900 goals, didn't he?
Yeah.
His last goal for us, was it the 700 for this career?
700 in this career,
So that was as his club 700th club goal as his 900. Yeah. So
Oh.
in total, yeah.
Well, if he can reach 1,000, that'd be something.
That's a very good shout. Benny, I'm going to let you go next. Who would you choose?
Tough one, Benny. Tough one.
Everyone's picked all the decent ones, really. But then again, I think back to my childhood again, and I'm thinking of a guy that's had a hit signal called Outstanding, if anyone remembers that, Andrew Cole. I think very, very, very underrated. A bit like Ian Wright, for some reason could never get into the England side. But nonetheless, you cannot take away what Andrew Cole did for the club. Part of the Premier League 100 club as well. You know, and there's not very many in that club, really. It's not as though the list there long for the 100 club in the Premier League as well. So, but really, really decent strike. His partnership with Dwight York's probably the greatest in the Premier League era, arguably. The centre forward partnership between them two absolutely tore Barcelona to shreds at the Nou Camp, Camp Nou. Absolutely tore him to shreds that night. Great 3-3 game. I just think that Andy Cole gets often overlooked, and people always say, "Oh, it used to take him 4 or 5 chances to score." Yes, sometimes that may be true, but still, he scored some fantastic goals. His link-up play as well. His play back with his back to goal was very, very underrated. He could hold the ball up. He was strong, and he could shift as well. He was quite a quick lad, and people don't really realise that about Andy Cole. But he was a quick lad, and it was no more evident than in the treble season when him and York would just rapidly goes past their fellow opposition defenders. They just would absolutely destroy, make mincemeat. And his movement was clever. His movement was always clever. And he had really good first touch. If you remember the goal against Tottenham Hotspur to send us on the way to winning the Premier League in the treble winning year, to set the tone for the greatest 10 days of my life. That touch over his shoulder, that's not an easy touch, that, and a touch and a flick over the keeper. That's not easy to do, that. And he scored some really fantastic goals, overhead kicks, bicycle kicks. Yeah. You had the Cantona-esque chip as well. So he was just brilliant player, Andy Cole. I think very, very underrated for me.
Was he first in the Premier League to score 5 in one match?
Yes. He switched town, wasn't
it? I think also, you make a good point that thought he needed 4 or 5 shots to score a goal. But like you said, there was times where sometimes you only need one chance out, nothing's great. You mentioned that Tottenham one, the perfect example. I remember one he scored at Ellen Road as well, where I think Scholes played the ball up to him, and I think he controlled it with his head, and he kicked it over Radaby and ran through on goal and put in the Revy. And for me, that goal doesn't get spoken about enough. And he was just that classic doing something out of nothing he was capable of. So
I think Cole. I think people think about back to that West Ham game when Blackburn won the Premier League or the Premiership as it was then. McCloskey he turned into. He turned into the greatest goalkeeper in the world that match. He was saving everything.
I mean, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
he turned superhuman. You
He
know.
missed that one chat. He missed that one chance, but he wasn't the only one who didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
miss a
I
chance.
think-
Tosco just turned into Yashavin. You know.
Yeah.
I think Andy Cole scored our last diving header against Tottenham when we beat them 5-3. We were 3-0 down at half time. He got
Yes.
us back into it. He scored a diving header from the right-hand side Beckham cross,
Yeah.
low. I think that might be our last ever diving header. I can't think of another.
Cavani at Tottenham.
Oh, Cavani, sorry. Yeah, of
That
course.
one,
Yeah.
That
And
was a,
Southampton. Cavani
yeah.
scored diving header.
Well,
to
I
beat
think what you
win.
mentioned about Cavani. I remember talking to a City friend of mine, but he's quite a fair guy, and he appreciates good football. Even if United score a quality goal, he'll post on Facebook and say, "This is what football's about." And I said to him, that Southampton game when we were 2-0 down.
2-0 down, yeah.
And he came back. And I'll just say, just watch Cavani for those first 5 minutes. And that is how a number 9 should play.
No, it was brilliant, that game.
You know, that game, if you ever want to see, that's how centre forward should play. Just show the second half of that game.
He was brilliant, that game.
Did you count Van Persie's header against Southampton when Van Persie came?
Well,
Is that more of a diving header, or is that more of a forward sort of?
That was more of a forward.
He scored
Yeah,
that.
more of a forward. Yeah.
He
Diving
scored
header
that.
is that you know?
Yeah,
so
that's
that-
yeah.
He
you're
scored
really,
that.
really low on the ground.
He scored that diving lob header at the World Cup.
The World Cup, wasn't it? Yeah, when he went swan diving.
You're never going to beat Lechkov's diving header though against Germany, are you? Ever
No, yeah.
for Bulgaria? Don't you remember the flying? But sorry, Barry, he got like a Friar took kind of. He was a brilliant player, Jordan Lechkov.
Yeah.
I think it was Stoichkov who put the ball in, and he just died. Oh, it was brilliant. He flew like a missile. Oh, Lechkov.
Yeah, I think the thing you could say about Andy Cole, to be fair as well, was that people used to say he needed 7 chances to score a goal. But at Man United, you were going to create at least 14 in a game. So he was always going to get 1 or 2 for you. And you score 1 or 2 goals a game, you know, you are on fire. So, yeah, a lot of fun for Andy Cole. It's amazing. You know, you've just mentioned it. You've said it all yourselves. It's not fair, really. And it's not, because let's look at some of the names that we've not mentioned. Mark Hughes.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely outstanding goal scorer.
I think what you said to about players like Benedez and all that, but Hughes volleying. That's gone out the game.
Yeah, the volley's
gone
gone
out the game. So, yeah.
He was pretty bloody good at them. Brian McClare, Chocky, anyone?
Chocky.
Probably the only person who could rival Benny for a beard. Currently. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know, that guy's always going to have us in the history books along with the likes of York and Sheringham if we're going back around that treble era. And of course, you could travel further back. You could have Jack Rowley, an absolutely superb goal scorer, Dennis Violet, even Joe Spence. But the person I'm going to add on to this is very much for the same reason as you, Stu. I just can't imagine this list being complete without this person's name being up there for a shout. He's made the most appearances for Manchester United, and he's the 7th highest goal scorer for Manchester United. So that's why I put him as an attacker. It is Mr. Ryan Giggs. I feel like he has to be on this list because he's the most decorated player in Manchester United's history. Yeah. And if it's the most decorated player in Manchester United's history, you don't get yourself onto the list of best players ever, your list probably isn't worth that much. So he has to go there. And that concludes our list building for today. And I'll tell you, boys, I've had an absolutely brilliant time. It hasn't felt like an hour and 45 minutes. I've loved it. It's been brilliant to have you back. And I can't wait to have you back again. I can definitely say I think I might have stretched this top out again now. It might actually be wearable. We'll see. See what happens. But it's been superb. I have really loved it. Box. I had plans for lots of things. Top 5 managers, top 5 goals, top 5 matches. You saw some of you are talking about who are the top 5 throw-in takers. Could have that as well, 3 kit takers. There's plenty that we could do for our top 5s, Boxy Boy. and we'll do them because these guys are not going anywhere. We will have the opportunity to bring them back in again. And genuinely, I really have loved it. John, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you back, sir. It's all right for you. You've still got the rest of the evening to go. The rest of us have got to get our hot chocolate ready and the slippers. And it's time. It's not even back today tonight. But yes, thank you very much for joining us. Stu, again for you. Absolutely superb. You back on. But all the praise and happiness for me goes to seeing Benny. I cannot tell you, Benny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much joy is in my heart for having you back on this screen talking about a football club that we know you love, adore, and support. And honestly, it is. I'm just fuck it. I'm just delighted, and I don't do the swearing on the channel, but I really am just so pleased to have you back with us because it's been brilliant. Absolutely loved it. And you lot in the chat as well. You've just not stopped talking. It's been very hard to work out what to throw on and what not to throw on. But thank you very much for joining us. We should be back on Wednesday. That's the plan. With a little bit of luck, this young man will be joining us again. Whilst we also get Tony in as well. That's our plan. We've got ourselves a little youth-focused show that we are desperate to try and get out there. But at the moment, we're just trying to get everybody in at the same time. So hopefully that's what we'll do. But if not, we'll be back for something. You'll always find us around here somewhere. So thank you. Join us on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram, all at All for United. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everybody. See you next time.